Science victories in Civ 6 are one of the more straightforward victory types you can achieve, with even the expert planning and tactical training as a Reddit war general being enough to, in most cases, win a science game. But in today's Civilization 6 video, we're going to be discussing the top 5 mistakes everyone makes in a science victory that can be game-changing if fixed. No no-brainers here like build more science or get spaceship parts first. These are unique mistakes that I've tested and found, hey, that's pretty nice. Like and subscribe if you do enjoy, and let me know down below any other mistakes and tips you might have, and what you think of the tips that I just gave. In any case, let's get started. First mistake is the only branch of the Russian military that has done somewhat decently over the last 30 years. Spies. Spies are an effective tool you can use to not only steal technologies, but also prevent the AI from sabotaging your own space parts or sabotaging their own spaceports. Now, while we all know what spies are, how effective they can be is something that I still feel like is underrated. You can do multiple things with them, but in the context of a science victory, the most important things are stealing Eurekas, preventing the AI from pillaging your spaceports, pillaging their own spaceports, or doing stuff like raising rebels and breaching dams and whatnot. The thing with spies is that you can have a lot of them. With the Owls of Minerva's Secret Society, which in my opinion is the best for a science victory, you can have a total of up to 5 spies very easily by the mid to late game, as long as you build the intelligence agency in the government plaza. With 5 spies, you are looking at potentially a free Eureka every 2 turns. In all actuality, it's going to be 5 spies taking 10 turns to get a Eureka, and then that is about 5 Eurekas every 2 turns. This is really huge because of the fact, every 10 turns, sorry, but this is huge because of the fact that with Eurekas, you get a 40% tech reduction in any technology, and even if you are super far behind, you're 3 eras behind even, with 5 spies and all the Eurekas you're going to be getting to catch up in technology, you pretty much get a 40% boost in science permanently, if you think of it that way. So the best thing to do in a science game, especially if you're super far behind, is to just keep building spies, more importantly even than getting stuff like campuses. Obviously, spies aren't the most expensive unit, usually taking about 7 to 8 turns per spy, but especially if you get the Owls of Minerva's Secret Society, you will very easily be able to catch up in a science victory, and even afterwards, after you steal technologies, after you get some really nice promotions, keeping a spy in each and every one of your potential spaceports is going to be absolutely huge, as in the mid to late game, the AI loves doing 3 things: pillaging spaceports, pillaging industrial zones, and neutralizing governors. All 3 of which can be absolutely cataclysmic depending on how you view it, because if you have Pingala in a city, you're going to get a massive reduction in science, culture, and spaceship art production, whereas if they pillage a spaceport, it could easily take you 10 to 20 turns to rebuild that, slowing down your science victory considerably. And obviously, if they pillage your industrial zone, you're not going to be able to produce anything, but that's probably the least bad out of the 3 options. By building spies and getting them very well promoted by the time you're building spaceship parts, you will have a very strong defense force that would make the CIA look absolutely incompetent, therefore guaranteeing your science victory. The second mistake is researching a technology you can get without a Eureka. Now, let me preface this by saying that if you desperately need the technology, sometimes it is better, especially if you're not going to get the Eureka anytime soon. For example, if you need to get education to build universities or something, and you know you're not going to get that Eureka quickly at all, that's probably one of the only times I would be okay personally with researching the technology. The thing with Eurekas is that 40% boost by getting them is absolutely massive. And a lot of the times the Eurekas are going to be something that you're going to be doing anyway, like building 2 factories, building 3 mines, building, for example, us killing a unit with a slinger, building a couple caravels on a naval map even. And if you know you can get this Eureka, even if it isn't the thing you need at the moment, like building an ancient wall's maybe not the most important thing for you to do, but considering the fact that it could reduce an important technology by 40%, a lot of the times it is better to just do that and build the walls. but not researching without a Eureka will essentially give you a negative 40% modifier, I guess is the best way to look at it. It is something that I myself do a lot in my games, and I did play a couple games where I just only researched text that I got a Eureka for. I found myself actively going and looking for Eurekas, and you're easily able to blitz through the tech tree as fast as possible. 40% is absolutely no joke, and I think the difference between actually waiting to get a Eureka and getting a Eureka, unless you need the technology, it is a lot of the times worth it. Again, just to preface, if you need a certain technology, like Montezuma is looking at your booty, licking his lips, it's probably better to get archery and not wait for that Eureka, but a lot of the times I would personally wait, research something else, get the Eureka, and then continue down my tech path, and always also plan for the Eureka. Like, even if it's something like 5 or 6 techs ahead, see what you can do to get it right now so you don't have to worry about that headache in the next 10-15 turns. Before we get started with the third mistake, as always, leave a like and subscribe if you do enjoy and want to grow 6 inches where it matters. A couple days for delivery, but it should get to you on time. But the third mistake is going to be science doesn't matter as much as you think. Now, it is called a science victory, and I would be absolutely dumb to say that science doesn't matter at all, but by the time the mid to late game rolls around, a lot of the times the limiting factor is going to be production, as you're going to get a lot of the technologies you need fairly early on, and at the end of the day, spaceports are so expensive that even selling your firstborn isn't going to be enough in all likelihood, and you are going to be spending about 20 to 30 turns just building the spaceport in most decent production cities. Now, the thing with that is that if you don't focus on production as much in the late game, that's actually going to slow down your science victory a lot faster due to how expensive all of this can be. But not only that, culture might be more important in the late game. Let me explain. The Tier 3 governments are absolutely no joke, as with communism or democracy, you either get massive yields to external and internal trade routes, and with communism, you get production per citizen, as well as a flat 10% boost to science. But not only that, globalization at the end of the civic tree is absolutely huge. Not only does e-commerce give you massive production when it comes to more trade routes, letting you get those spaceship parts up faster, but there's also a policy card that gives you a 5% boost to science for each city-state you're suzerain of. This can be absolutely huge, as since a lot of the envoys are almost exclusive to the civic tree, you're going to have maybe 4 to 5 suzerains already at least. With the boost, you are going to be getting massive amounts to science globally. Do that with communism giving you a flat 10%, and you might even be able to double your science in specific circumstances. Now, again, aside from that, culture really isn't that important in the early game or the mid game, but you do really need to build a lot of it, because in the late game, there are some very important civics that can allow you to build things as fast as you possibly can. So again, in the late game, I would recommend focusing on culture and production. Really culture more from the early on, make sure you don't ignore. But by the time the late game rolls around and you have a lot of the science buildings you need, just focus on getting as much production and as much culture as possible. Therefore, you'll be able to win games a lot faster. The fourth mistake is building just one spaceport. Now, despite the fact that you can very easily win a game with just one spaceport, it can go by a lot faster by building two. Let me explain. A lot of the times in the late game, production is the limiting factor, so spending time on campus research grants really isn't going to help you, I guess, advance the game as fast as you might think. Not only that, but also by just taking 20 to 30 turns to build a spaceport in cities that have decent production, you're not really missing too much out on anything else, as a lot of the times you're going to have all the buildings you need for culture, production, science, heck, even gold, and you're really going to find yourself not being able to build anything as everything's already built, and in that time, building a spaceport isn't going to take too much away from the rest of your game. Now, the second reason is the fact that by the time the exoplanet expedition comes out and you've launched that and you're looking for a new planet, you need to get that modifier up to 50 by either building Lagrange laser stations or the other one that I can't think of right now for some reason. Just a brain fart, I guess. but really getting more cities to build that will let you win the game faster, especially if you are in a close game. Getting to 50 and Lagrange laser stations only providing one per turn means that building one every 2 to 3 turns in the one city you have the spaceport in is going to be a lot less effective than building 5 or 6 different cities, maybe even 3 or 4 actually, with just 3 to 4 turns for each space part, allows you to get the Lagrange laser stations and whatnot faster, thus allowing you to win the game a little faster than usual. This isn't really the biggest mistake or anything, as building just 1 or 2 is a lot of the times more than enough to win the game, but you would just be able to win a little faster by building more than that, and by the time the spaceports actually come online, you aren't going to have too much else that you really need to build at this point, giving you an opportunity to get the spaceport. And the final mistake is culture not being at the forefront of your mind. This does build on the third mistake a little bit, but the third one is really more focused towards the mid to late game and also about production and science, but this one is all about the culture baby. Culture might be the most important resource in the game, and it most definitely is in the early game. Early game, you want to get the tier 2 government as fast as possible in order to get oligarchy, classical republic, or even autocracy, which give you massive yields to either your government plaza and palace, amenities and housing, or combat strength for your military units. Not only that, but getting government plazas and the ancestral hall super early on will let you do the most important thing you should be doing in the early game, getting cities. It doesn't matter if you have perfect district placement, 10 cities is almost always better than 5 for Civilization 6, and in order to do that, you're going to need to either go for military, a la oligarchy, or more likely, build as many cities as you possibly can. Colonization gives you a 50% production towards settlers in the early empire policy card, but Ancestral Hall gives you another 50% in the government plaza, and gives all settled cities a free builder, letting them get up and running as fast as possible. But that's not even close to being it. Envoys to get city-state suzerains are huge in the early game for 3 main reasons, really. Number 1, getting libraries early on and getting an envoy in a science city-states give you a lot more science per library. Same thing goes for markets, workshops, etc., etc. But getting suzerain of city-states give you a really nice bonus a lot of the time, and depending on the city-state you are suzerain of can be game-changing. Zanzibar gives you 2 unique luxury resources. Bologna gives you great people points for every building you have, which is absolutely huge. District, I should say. And then you also have different ones like Taruga giving a 5% boost to science, Auckland giving production to each water tile, I guess, coastal water tile, and getting these envoys are almost exclusive towards the civic path. And finally, we are going to talk about governors. Governor titles, especially with secret societies, are huge, as getting Magnus with provision in the early game will let you build settlers without sacrificing population, which can be game-changing. Governors are exclusive to the civic path, and going for culture just to get governors and envoys and an early political philosophy is the most important thing you should be doing in the early game. But not only that, natural philosophy doubles campus adjacency. You get corps and armies through the civic tree, and you also get rationalism, which gives you a 50%, yes, 50% boost to cities with 15 population or a 4 adjacency campus. Getting all these as soon as possible will increase the amount of science you get, a lot more than going down the research tree, because aside from campuses and libraries and universities, the early to mid game is really barren of anything that gives you science, and you'd probably get a lot more science by, building campuses everywhere, but for the most part focusing on cultures, getting monument, getting a couple theater squares everywhere, maybe even getting the Colosseum as well. And yeah, pretty much culture is one of the most important, if not the most important resource in a science victory, and you should be going for that. If you do enjoy the video, leave a like, and okay, you know what, I already said that twice. Let me know down below in the comments what you want to see next, and what other mistakes you might have, and also what you think about some of the mistakes I just mentioned. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.